I didn't notice her at first. Or maybe I did, and pretended not to. It was raining that morning, the kind that makes the air taste like old metal. I'd opened the shop early, still half asleep, the smell of engine oil and burnt coffee hanging heavy. My hands were blackened with grease before the clock even hit 9. And then she walked in, heels clicking too carefully for this kind of place. "Do you fix old things?" she asked. Her voice had that tone, calm, but with a history behind it. I looked up from the carburetor. Machines, yes. People, not so much. She smiled at that, barely. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes but still makes you want to see it again. Her name was Elena. She had an old blue sedan that looked like it had seen too many winters. She stood next to it like she owed it something, her fingers grazing the chipped paint near the hood. I told her I'd need a few days to get the part. She nodded, didn't say much else. But she didn't leave either, just watched the rain for a while through the open garage door. I should have gone back to work. Instead, I asked, "You okay waiting here? The coffee's terrible, but it's hot." That was the first time she really looked at me. And I mean looked, like she was measuring how much of that offer was kindness, and how much was something else I hadn't meant to show. We sat near the workbench, she on an upside-down bucket, me on the floor, pretending to check a toolkit. She told me she used to teach literature. Said she liked words that don't explain themselves too quickly. I didn't know what to say to that. I wasn't much of a reader. Still, I caught myself listening to her voice instead of her words. It was low, textured, careful. When she paused, the rain filled the silence, and somehow that felt like part of the conversation too. "You work alone?" she asked after a while. "Mostly," I said. "People talk too much. Machines just tell you what's wrong if you listen long enough." She laughed, quiet and genuine this time. "That's the loneliest kind of wisdom I've heard in a while." There was a power cut for a minute. The lights flickered, then went out completely. The hum of the fridge stopped, and the whole room went still except for the sound of her bracelets shifting as she moved. In that dim gray light from the rain, I saw her face differently. Not polished, just tired maybe. Honest. She asked for a towel to dry her hands. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. It wasn't intentional, just the kind of thing that happens when space gets too small. But my chest tightened anyway, as if something important had been exchanged without permission. She noticed. I could tell by the way she looked away too fast, the way her throat moved when she swallowed. When the lights came back, she stood up, said she'd return tomorrow to check on the car. Before leaving, she hesitated by the door, half-turned, as if wanting to say something but deciding against it. "Thanks for the coffee," she said instead. And then she was gone, heels clicking against wet concrete, fading into the noise of the rain. I spent the rest of the day fixing engines and pretending not to think about her. But every time the bell above the door rang, my heart jumped before reason caught up. It's been 2 days since then. The towel she used is still hanging on the hook near my bench, untouched. And I keep wondering why I haven't washed it. She came back on a Tuesday. The morning light was thin, the kind that slips through the garage shutters like it's sneaking in. I was bent over the same blue sedan, grease under my nails again, pretending I hadn't been waiting. "Still alive?" she asked. Her tone was light, but there was a new kind of fatigue under it, something softer than last time. "Barely," I said, wiping my hands on a rag. "Your car's more stubborn than you." She smiled faintly. "You don't even know me." "Maybe," I said, but the car told me enough. That earned me the smallest laugh, barely a sound, more like an exhale that remembered what laughter used to feel like. We worked side by side for a while. She insisted on helping, holding the flashlight, handing me wrenches, asking questions she already knew the answers to. Her sleeves were rolled up, exposing wrists that looked too delicate for the oil and grime. She didn't seem to mind. I noticed her hands trembled slightly when the tools slipped. She tried to hide it by tucking them under her arms when I wasn't looking. I didn't mention it. I just slowed down my work so she wouldn't feel useless. "Don't you get bored here?" she asked suddenly. "Sometimes," I said, "but boredom's better than noise." She tilted her head. "You don't like noise?" I grew up around the kind that never stopped. Talking, shouting, music that wasn't really music. This kind of quiet feels earned. For a second, she didn't reply. just stared at the flickering light above the workbench like it was saying something only she could hear. I used to hate silence, she said finally. Now it's the only thing that listens. The words hung there, too heavy to ignore. She leaned against the car, her posture still proud, but her eyes somewhere far off. In the silence that followed, the rain from the previous days had left the air damp, filled with the faint smell of rust and wet rubber. I caught her watching her reflection in the metal door, like she didn't quite recognize herself anymore. "You okay?" I asked quietly. She blinked, caught off guard. Of course. Why wouldn't I be? But her voice betrayed her, just a fraction. Too even. Too careful. I didn't push. Instead, I pointed at the engine. "We'll get her running soon. Just needs a little patience." "Cars or people?" she murmured, almost to herself. "Both, maybe." She helped me close up after that, brushing dust from her palms like she wanted to erase the whole afternoon. When she reached for her bag, a lock of hair fell into her face, and she brushed it back with a hand that still trembled slightly. "You've got oil on your cheek," I said. "Do I?" She tried to wipe it, missed the spot. I hesitated, then stepped closer, too close, maybe, and used my thumb to wipe it away. Her breath caught, barely audible, but enough for me to feel it. For a moment, the shop was utterly still. She looked up at me, eyes unreadable, then took a slow step back, creating space that felt like a door closing. "Thank you," she said, almost a whisper. And then, softer still, "Don't look at me like that." But I already was. It was late when she came again, too late for a customer, but I didn't mind. The storm had started an hour earlier, heavy and impatient, turning the road outside into a mirror of streetlights. I was closing up when I saw her car pull in, wipers thrashing uselessly against the downpour. She stepped out, coat pulled tight, hair damp at the edges. "I know you're closed," she said. "I just needed to drive." There was something off in her voice, thin, unsteady, like she'd been arguing with herself before knocking on my door. "Come in," I said, opening the shop a little wider. "It's warmer inside." She sat on the stool near the counter, water dripping from her sleeves. I made coffee, pretending not to notice her hands shaking slightly when she tried to hold the mug. The fluorescent light above us buzzed like it couldn't keep up with the silence. "I shouldn't be here," she said finally. "Then why are you?" She looked at me then, really looked. The kind of look that doesn't search for answers, just a place to land. Because when everything feels too loud, this place doesn't. I didn't know what to do with that. My heart was already too aware of her presence, of the smell of rain on her coat, the way her shoulders looked small for the first time since I'd met her. So I said nothing. She talked, slowly at first, then like something had cracked open. About her ex-husband calling again. About how the silence after his voice always hurt more than the words themselves. About how she hated the way pity looked on people's faces when they said she was strong. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. And somewhere between her words, the storm softened, but the air between us didn't. When she went quiet, I noticed the small details, the smudge of eyeliner under her eye, the tiredness that didn't belong to one night, the way her fingers circled the rim of the mug as if to anchor herself. "Sometimes," she said, eyes on her coffee, "I wonder if anyone actually sees me anymore." I didn't mean to answer the way I did. "I do." The words slipped out before I could catch them. Her head lifted slightly, her gaze meeting mine. The kind of silence that followed could have broken glass. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered. "Maybe not." The shop lights flickered again. For a second, I thought the power would cut like last time, but it didn't. She stood, moved to place her mug in the sink. When she passed by, her sleeve brushed my arm. That single touch felt like an unspoken question neither of us was ready to answer. Her phone buzzed on the counter, his name flashing on the screen. She froze, then turned it face down without answering. When she finally looked at me, her expression was unreadable. Fear, maybe, or guilt, or something in between. "I should go," she said. I nodded, though every part of me wanted to stop her. She hesitated at the door, hand on the knob, rainlight catching her face in a way I knew I wouldn't forget. Then, barely audible, "Don't wait for me." But she didn't move. She didn't come for a week after that storm. The days stretched thin, the air in the shop heavy with waiting. Every time the doorbell rang, my chest betrayed me. But it was never her, just customers, noise, the same rhythm pretending to be enough. Then, one evening, she appeared again. No rain this time, no excuse. Just Elena, standing in the doorway like she'd been debating this moment for days and lost. "You're still open?" she asked softly. "Not really. I put down the wrench anyway. But you can stay." She stepped inside. The air changed the way it always did around her, subtle, electric, uneasy. She looked around, slower than usual, touching the edge of the workbench, the shelves. Her fingers trailed across the same towel she'd used that first day, now stained and frayed. "You never threw it away," she said quietly. "Didn't see a reason to." Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You keep things you shouldn't." I almost said, "So do you," but stopped myself. We sat across from each other again, the silence heavier than the rain ever was. She didn't fill it this time. Neither did I. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller. "I told him I can't see him anymore. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to." She stared at her hands, thumbs tracing invisible circles. "He said I'm running away from everything. Maybe I am." "You don't owe him your peace," I said. She looked up then, eyes glistening, not from tears but from the effort of holding them back. "You talk like you know me." "Maybe I'm trying to." That made her laugh, but it wasn't real. "Don't. You're too young to be ruined by someone else's story." She stood, restless, pacing near the door. "This, whatever this is, it doesn't make sense. You're—" She stopped herself, exhaled hard. "You're supposed to be a mechanic I barely know." And yet, I waited. She didn't finish. So I said it for her. "And yet it doesn't feel that way." Her silence was an answer. The sound of the ceiling fan filled the room, spinning too slow, like time itself was listening. Finally, she faced me, her arms crossed, eyes unsteady. "What are we doing, Noah?" Her voice cracked on my name. I'd never heard that before. I swallowed, searching for sense where there wasn't any. "I don't know," I said. "But every time you leave, the room feels wrong." She closed her eyes like the words hurt. Then, quietly, almost to herself, "You make me remember what I promised I'd stop wanting." The shop was silent again, except for the ticking of a cooling engine somewhere behind us. I took one step closer, not enough to touch, but close enough to feel the warmth between us thin out the air. Her eyes opened, wet but unwavering. "Don't make this harder," she whispered. I nodded once, even though I already had. And then she said the line that stayed with me long after she left. Not loud, not trembling, just honest. "I used to think loneliness was safest." "You're proving me wrong," you said. The next time she came, she didn't speak at first. Just stood by the doorway, one hand wrapped around something. A folded envelope, creased and worn. I knew better than to ask. I just motioned for her to sit, poured her coffee, black this time, no sugar. She used to take it sweet. She looked older that day. Not in years, but in weight. The kind of tired that doesn't show until someone stops pretending. "I wasn't going to come back," she said finally. "Then why did you?" She smiled faintly. "Because I hate leaving things unfinished." For a while, she just stared at the envelope in her hand, rubbing her thumb over the edge. When she finally set it down, it made a sound too soft for the kind of storm it carried. "It's from him," she said. "My ex. He sent it last week." I nodded, pretending that didn't sting. "You read it?" She shook her head. "Not yet. I didn't want to alone." Something in the way she said that, "not alone," made my chest tighten. I didn't move, just waited. She unfolded the letter slowly, eyes scanning the page. Her expression changed, subtle, unreadable. Then she handed it to me. It wasn't long. Just a few lines written in a familiar man's hand, the kind that thinks it still has control over the ending. "You'll always chase what you can't fix, Elena. That's what broke us. I hope you find someone who lets you stop running." When I looked up, she was watching me, not for pity, not for comfort, just to see what truth I'd pull from it. "You remind me of him sometimes," she said softly. "Not in the ways that hurt, just in the way you look at people like there's something you could save." "I don't think anyone wants saving," I said. She gave a tired smile. "That's where you're wrong." The clock ticked too loud for the next minute. She seemed far away, eyes on the wall, voice somewhere else. When I met you, she said, I thought you were just kind. Then I realized it wasn't kindness. It was attention, the kind I used to live for. I swallowed hard. And now it scares me. There it was, the confession I hadn't expected but somehow already knew. She stood, walked toward the car she no longer needed fixed. Stopped beside it, tracing a line through the dust on the hood. I kept thinking you were a distraction, she murmured. But you've become a mirror. And I hate what I see. I wanted to speak. Anything, but the words tangled. She turned slightly, rainlight catching the side of her face. Don't worry, she said. You didn't do anything wrong. A pause. Then quieter. That's what makes it worse. When she left, the envelope was still on the counter. I unfolded it again after she drove away, tracing the ink until my fingers smeared it. The rain started, soft and patient. And I realized something I hadn't before. She hadn't come back for her car. She came back to say goodbye without saying it. She didn't call. She just showed up one evening when the sun was already low, the sky bruised with gold and gray. The air outside smelled like rain but didn't follow through, as if the weather was holding its breath along with us. Elena stood in the doorway, not waiting for permission. Her hair was a little messy, her coat undone. For the first time, she didn't look like she'd practiced what she was going to say. Still working this late? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. Couldn't sleep last night, I said. Figured I'd fix something that wasn't myself. That earned a small laugh, a real one this time, though it cracked halfway through. She walked toward me, the click of her heels swallowed by the sound of the radio humming low in the background. She didn't bring the letter, or her car, or any excuse this time. Just herself. I read it, she said, eyes somewhere past my shoulder. The letter. She nodded. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. It just closed something. There was a pause, the kind that doesn't need filling. She turned, looking around the shop like it was the first time she'd really seen it. Do you ever wonder, she said softly, why we find comfort in the wrong people? I don't think comfort cares about right or wrong, I said. It just happens. She looked at me then. Not searching, not hiding, just there. I don't remember moving closer. 1 second we were two people in a room that smelled like oil and dust, and the next we were close enough for silence to feel fragile. Her hand brushed the edge of the workbench, fingers grazing mine. It wasn't deliberate, but neither of us pulled away. For a moment, everything that had been circling between us, restraint, guilt, longing, settled into something quieter. Not the fire I'd imagined, but the ache of something true. You know this can't go anywhere, she said, barely above a whisper. I know. She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. But we're already standing here anyway. We didn't talk after that. We just stayed, close enough to feel each other breathe, far enough to pretend it was still a choice. The radio shifted songs, an old one, full of static and warmth. She leaned against the workbench, exhaustion softening her posture. I sat beside her, our shoulders barely touching. She exhaled, long and uneven. You make silence feel safe again. I wanted to tell her she did the same, but the words wouldn't have made it better. So I let them stay unspoken. Minutes passed. The light dimmed. She turned slightly, resting her forehead against my temple. A gesture so gentle it almost didn't exist. But it did. That was all. No confession. No promise. Just two people who stopped running from the truth for a single, fragile moment. When she finally pulled away, she said only one thing. Soft, certain, final. This feels like the ending I never thought I'd get. It's been 6 months since I last saw her. The shop's quieter now. The same hum of tools, the same smell of oil and rain. But something in the air has shifted. Lighter, like it's finally stopped waiting for someone. Sometimes, when I open early, I catch myself looking at the empty space where her car used to sit. Not with ache anymore, just with that quiet kind of remembering that doesn't demand anything. People come and go. Engines stall, then live again. I still wipe my hands on the same towel she once used, though it's more habit than sentiment now. Maybe that's how healing works. You don't notice the exact moment it stops hurting. It just does. I never told her what that last evening meant to me. Didn't need to. It wasn't about what was said, or what didn't happen. It was about what shifted inside both of us when we stopped pretending we didn't care. She left a note before she went, folded neatly, no name on it, just resting on the counter like a forgotten receipt. I didn't open it for weeks. When I finally did, it was only one line. Some people come to fix what's broken. Others come to remind you you're still alive. I don't think she realized she did both. Since then, I've started reading old books she mentioned, the ones that don't explain themselves too quickly. I fix cars, drink bad coffee, and live in the quiet she once said she hated. And yet, every so often, I catch her voice in the stillness, soft and certain. You make silence feel safe again. It's strange how someone can enter your life like a storm and leave behind calm. She didn't stay, and maybe she never was meant to. But I'm different now, less restless, more careful about what I look for in people. Maybe that's what love really is, not the staying, but the changing. If you asked me what we were, I wouldn't know how to answer. We never defined it, never tried. She wasn't a chapter or a heartbreak. She was a reminder that even the things we can't keep can still make us better. There's a kind of peace in that, the kind that doesn't fade when the door closes. Tonight, the rain's back. Same sound, same rhythm. I leave the garage door half open and listen. Somewhere, I hope she's hearing it too. Maybe thinking of the boy who once fixed her car and said too little, too late. And that's okay. Some stories aren't meant to end neatly. They just settle, quietly, honestly, into who we become after. So if you've ever had someone like that, someone who changed you without staying, tell me. I'll be here, listening.